When I had the chance to talk to Dr. Afton Hassett about the chronic pain reset, I jumped to the opportunity because any of us now, luckily, I've never suffered from chronic pain, but we have all probably known someone who has dealt with this malaise. And I don't know if there's a better definition of that word than chronic pain. And so I love this 30 days of activities, practices, and skills to help you thrive. Dr. Hassett has got a resume about a half mile long, and I only have 45 minutes to an hour to talk to her. We could spend the whole dang time talking about her resume, but I wanted to get right to this, even though she is a professor at the University of Michigan. Roll Tide.
Oh,
That's just where I'm at. I mean,
World to a real story.
I'm just saying Michigan shouldn't be ranked ahead, but that's just me talking. Who am I? Who am I to be angry? But how are you, Dr. Hassett?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
I do. Can I ask you one personal question?
You may.
Afton. Where did that name come from? Because that is one of the most, it's pretty and it's unusual. You have a hard time finding your name in key shops, don't you?
I have yet to find it. Every once in a while, I run into somebody else named Afton, but that's more rare than anything. It's a river in Scotland, and it's the name of a friend of my mother's when she was pregnant with me. And so she liked her friend's name so much, she named me for her.
Wow. That's a cool story. I love cool stories. I thought my name had a cool story. I thought I was named after an actor. And then my older sister told me just a few years ago, no, I dated a guy for like 2 weeks and mom thought his name was fun.
Oh.
I'm like, man, you just took away all of my hopes and dreams.
Wow. Go with the first story.
Yeah, I'll just make up my own dang story. That's what I'll do. But okay, back to it. How did you find yourself going down this road of studying chronic pain?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I didn't intend to. I ended up here quite accidentally. Back when I was doing my training in California, I was working with people with chronic mental illnesses. These were folks who had some pretty significant illnesses like schizophrenia. And but I did have some lovely women I was working with. And every time we seemed to make some progress in their therapy, they would go backwards and their pain would flare. And I thought, what is this? This is so interesting that the more stress they get, the more their pain kind of flares up. And I had a lovely supervisor who was a very thoughtful woman named Martha Truax, who said, you go to the UCSD Medical Library and pull some articles on chronic pain and conditions like fibromyalgia and see what you learn. And I think I read 2 articles and I went, whoa. This is fascinating. How is it that thoughts and behaviors and stress and emotions actually impact physiologically people's functioning and actually impacts the brain? I thought, this is truly mind-body medicine. And then I was hooked. So this was some 20 some odd years ago. And the brain science since has just flooded mainstream media and markets. We're learning so much more about the brain, but really science, and has greatly influenced how we think about conditions like chronic pain.
Well, from what I do, because I've been in broadcasting for a long time, and I have seen, especially in the last 20 years, there's a bit of a symbiotic relationship here. Mm-hmm. In the last 20 years, the taboo of mental health has, I believe, been washed away. Now, I say that because we can all find outlets. You'll always find an outlier, somebody who's going to stand there and go, the world's flat. You always are. But the majority of us have come to understand the importance of mental health, the importance of shining the light on it, the importance of not having the judgment, if you will. And the fact that do you think that, see, I think that spurred science. That's just me. You're in the middle of it. So and here's what you need to know about me, Dr. Hassett. I'm never bothered by somebody telling me I'm wrong and proving it. So please don't ever think you need to spare my feelings.
Okay, I will. But you're not wrong about that. You're right that there's been tremendous stigma around mental illness that has slowly started to dissipate because we understand so much more about the brain. But before we go in much further, though, I also do want to disentangle chronic pain from chronic mental illness because they're two very different things. They do overlap. We kind of see the path that people get chronic pain and then tend to get depressed and anxious. And that seems to happen almost more than people are depressed and anxious and then develop chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
But it can go both ways. And certainly they play into each other. So we do see the risk of people with depression more likely, they're more likely to develop chronic pain. And we do see the risk of people with chronic pain, they're more likely to develop depression. But again, they're separate processes that likely do overlap in the brain.
Can I ask you this? Because again, you have the experience and I don't have it. Is the depression harder to battle in someone who has a degenerative chronic pain disease as opposed to a traumatic event, an accident turning into a chronic pain? Just as a layman, I would think that's two very different worlds.
It is, and again, there's such individual factors. I mean, people are so different in how they react to a degenerative illness or how they react to a traumatic event. And in many cases, or most people actually do not develop mental illness in response to a traumatic event or in response to a degenerative illness. I mean, people are really incredibly resilient. And that is kind of the part B of my pain interest and research story, is my fascination with resilience, positive emotions, healthy thought processes, and doing the things you love, and how powerful those are in the ability to heal and to create well-being and to dissipate pain.
Isn't it amazing how in the last few years, because I follow science because I'm a science geek and I'm not smart enough to understand it, but I so love it, that within the last 10 to 20 years, there have been so much data acquired that shows joy lies when you can put it outside of yourself, when you can help others, when you can, if you truly want to feel better. I mean, this has become a therapy, then volunteer. It has almost 100% success rate, which, stamps don't have 100% success rate. I mean, we've all ended up with who's this to? But it's amazing how stepping outside of your own issues helps. And I love that about your book. I mean, you encourage that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one of the most healing things that we can do is to, like you said, just kind of step outside of ourselves. And the more we become self-focused and worried about the past and frightened about the future, the worse our mental health tends to get, no matter what our condition is, if we have chronic pain or not. But the more we kind of turn to the people we love and do things that are helpful and supportive for them, the more that we volunteer, do things that feel important to us, the healthier we can become. It's truly not just emotional health, it's actually physical health can improve by volunteering and doing things that are outside of yourself that are meaningful to you.
It's just so easy to wall yourself off when you hurt. And like I said, I've only known a few people who have been burdened with chronic pain. And I can't. And both of the people that I have known have always fought through it, and they don't walk around going, woe is me. You just realize the things they have to do to get through a day. And I say this with just the utmost admiration. And I'm not going to lie, heartbreak.
Yeah. Yeah, no, rightly so. And you say that you only know a couple people, mostly because many people with chronic pain just mask it and they don't have an outwardly visible disability, right? So you don't know it.
Yeah.
And many people are out there and they're just faking it. And they are, I'm okay, I'm showing up, I'm doing my work, and then I'm going home and I'm crashing. But, it is the stoicism and the perseverance and just the incredible courage of so many of these people. So I bet you know many more people with chronic pain than you think you do.
I bet I do. And And is there a place for stoicism? And I say this, that there are times, and maybe you've had the same thing, when you feel like a little cold's coming on,
Mhm.
right? And then you tell yourself, I don't have time for a cold. And I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And presto magico, you're fine. And then, as you can tell, I have a little, because I'm just getting over one. But I had it a couple of weeks ago and I wasn't sick. I was fine, I was fine, I was fine. My wife was on a business trip. My wife comes home a day after she's had a chance to rest.
Yeah.
Boom, it hits.
Yeah.
And I told my sons, they're like, what happened? I'm like, I think my body knew we don't have time for this. We don't have time for this. There'll be time soon. And as soon as there was time, hello, where's the Kleenex?
Yeah. So this is so interesting. This actually calls into to my memory some studies conducted by Sheldon Cohen of Pittsburgh, probably about 25 years ago. And they're kind of what they call the famous cold studies. And what they demonstrated is that, colds come on often after we're stressed for a long period of time, right? And so it doesn't surprise us. Like you can hold it together, you can hold it together through we see it in college students, so they hold it together through finals and then everybody's sick.
Yeah.
So what Sheldon Cohen did that was so fascinating is he took very stressed people and he assessed them over time. He looked at their positive emotions and their negative emotions before they came into this, for lack of better terms, this weird hotel. And they kept all the participants in this kind of hotel area and they infected them all with cold viruses. And what they found is that the people who had more negative mood were more likely to catch a cold and to have a worse cold. The people with the positive emotions were actually even more protected. So they were more protected than the negative emotions created risk. So it's some of the coolest evidence we have to date that our emotions, that our mindset can indeed influence our immunity and our ability to fight off a common cold and other viruses.
Does the positivity, and I completely agree with positivity. I think it just takes you so many places, is one of the benefits, and maybe unintended benefits, is that when you're positive, even when you're going through some sort of health crisis, you're frankly just more fun to be around. And people like being with you. And we are social animals, right? We are
Yeah.
social animals. So you're able to feed off the energy that the people who can, and again, I don't mean this as disparaging, I don't, but who can stand being with you. Right? And you make it easier to be with you. And please don't hear this as a negative, because that's, what I'm trying to say is that if you make it easier for people to give themselves to you, then you're able to draw on that strength.
Yeah. And I think that makes a difference. And this, kind of takes us to another theory. Barbara Fredrickson, who was just an incredible psychologist, probably one of the greatest living
Wrote
psychologists.
the opening to your book.
She wrote my foreword. Bless her heart. I'm just sending her a hug across this podcast. But she actually developed the broaden and build theory of positive emotions. And what she says is that what positive emotions do is first of all, they broaden how you think. You tend to think in a much more open and creative manner when you're having positive emotions. You also it actually opens up how you see the world. When we're tensed and frightened, our vision very much narrows, our options very much narrow because we're kind of in our fight or flight mode, right? But with positive emotions, it just opens us up. The second piece, like you were saying, is it draws people to you. Positive emotions have the effect of making people feel safe and want to see you. They draw people to you. And by doing that actually builds your resilience, because the more people we have around us that are supportive and loving, actually the healthier we tend to be. So our social support networks are some of the most important things that we have for our mental and physical health.
Well, and that's one of the things I liked about the book is that it's giving you the tools to get back out there. Because as I said, it's very easy to wall yourself off. And especially have my wife says my greatest fault. And here I have a list. Is I hate being a burden. I hate being in the way. I hate being sick because I'm not helping. I hate, that's my, and I like to say I'm empathetic, but she sees, and I can't, she's not wrong, is my point. But it's easy when you are that way to wall yourself away from people thinking you're helping.
Yeah. And part of it too is kind of biologically how we're constructed. So when we're sick, there's actually an immune reaction that releases these little messengers that tell us to engage in sickness behavior. So sickness behavior is to withdraw, is to be still, have low energy, is to be quiet. Um, and that has the effect of not having you go out there and spread your germs to everybody. And in the olden days of not walking out and getting eaten by a pterodactyl or whatever beast might get you, right? So you retire. And so that is kind of the normal thing that we do is withdraw. So when we see people do this as part of their illness, it makes sense. And there's probably a biological element of that as well. But it doesn't mean that we can't recognize it and say, is there something I can do to reach out? Because it is going to make me probably feel better to connect with somebody.
Yeah, and that's I love it when the pain we're gonna get into it because there's practices and skills. I will
Mhm.
say I loved the little addendums at the personal stories at the end
Right.
of each one.
Yeah.
Because you had it from a lot of different people, and it's always good to hear somebody's personal journey,
Uh,
right? Instead of just hearing, hey, you should do this.
yeah. So I love that you brought that up, Gary. So I reached out to 10 people to ask that I knew who had chronic pain. I said, well, maybe I should get an 11th because somebody's probably going to say no. Nobody said no. Every person who has lived experience, who's lived with chronic pain, said, yes, I would love to share a story. And these stories are not the stories about, I went here and I got diagnosed and yada, yada. They really are, this is kind of what I learned. And this is something that happened. And this is why I have kind of this new lease on life, a new way of being in the world and kind of just sharing their hints and tips. And so I love those. I think they add so much to the book that, people are saying, I've kind of tried some of this stuff and this is how it worked in my life. So, just hearing it from somebody who has lived experience and has tried some of the tips and tricks.
Well, I would that makes total sense because if you've been in a dark place,
Mhm.
we as humans, I think for the most part, like trying to help. We like reaching out, you
Yeah.
know. It's sometimes the worst person to talk to is people who've just lost weight because they're going to tell you what you're doing wrong, right? They're going to tell you how you're doing it and what they're doing and all that.
They want to help.
But that's more of a judgment thing. In this situation, this is I know where you're at and I know it's not fun.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying this will help, but it's worth trying.
Right, right. And then, and that's what we suggest. So kind of putting on my academic hat. And I spent a lot of times thinking about the treatments that we have for people with chronic pain that have been evidence-based, tried and true. We know they're helpful for a subset of people. And so one of the major sets of studies that we're doing right now is we're looking at treatments for chronic pain, chronic low back pain, that we know are effective for a subset of people and trying to figure out who does what treatment work for, right? So if we are able to understand who you are, what your particular pain profile is, do you sleep well? Do you have some depression? Are you not very mobile? And if we understand these things about you, can we say, okay, now we understand you most likely are going to benefit by physical therapy. So those are the types of studies that we're doing now. How do we tailor treatment or how to figure out which treatment works well? Because really what we do now is we just ask people to try things, one thing after another, after
Yeah.
another, after another. And it just reminded me, you were saying that, to people just to be open and kind of keep trying different things. And that's what matters is to continue to try.
Yeah. Because you do, and that's the harbinger of medicine. I mean, a dear friend of mine is a surgeon,
Mhm.
and he tells me, he goes, because he's an oncological surgeon. He goes, when you have cancer, he goes, the truth of it is, it's your cancer. It's a cancer that doesn't exist anywhere else in the entire world. He
Yeah.
goes, but we have tried so many things that we have a list of things to try, and
Uh-huh.
we don't know what will work. But we have a lot of things we could try. And so instead of just flying blind, we go, okay, we've got these things that seem to work. And
Yeah.
so we're going to try them.
Yeah.
And and sometimes they only work for a little while, but we'll
Yeah.
take it. We'll
Yeah.
take that little while.
Yeah. And that's kind of it too. And I think cancer almost more than any other field has done a really nice job using genetics to kind of help now, because that's that whole thought. If we can understand who you are at kind of the genetic level, then we're more likely to be able to pick the right chemotherapy agent, right? So they've made great advances there. We're way behind on the genetics of pain because, again, I think pain is so multi-causal. There's so many different things that cause it. So we haven't pinned down the gene, nor are we anywhere close. But we do understand a fair amount about human behavior and about biomechanics and about history. So we can we're trying to make some better educated guesses to better match people with treatment so that they can get better faster.
Let's just nerd out for a second, though, just
Okay.
because you're in
I'm
science and you're
I
medicine.
love nerding out.
How much fun is it in the last 3 years to see the paths that we're seeing in cancer treatment and Alzheimer and dementia treatment?
Yeah.
Isn't that the most encouraging thing that possibly in
Yeah.
my children, I have young children because this is the face of optimism. It's possible in their lifetime, cancer will be treated like malaria is.
Yeah.
Oh, here, have a pill. Isn't that crazy? And the stuff that they're coming and the thing they have with the pill and the breast cancer and the licorice and oh my gosh.
It is remarkable. And again, it's been a beautiful investment. We have to tip our hats to the National Institutes of Health and the investments that Congress is endowed, but the investments that they're making in these diseases, because a lot of it starts at kind of the academic level or just these early levels, just making these early discoveries, and then the pharma companies come along and kind of build on it. And it is just remarkable. If anybody told you that many cancers are curable, would you believed it, right? It really is remarkable about how much we're learning about biology, about our brains. And this is our hope for chronic pain too. My goal is that down the road, I won't even be helping people with chronic pain. That'll be cured. What I'll be helping them with is leading a life that feels really rich and rewarding, right? Because that's kind of the part B of my book. Let's tackle the chronic pain and see how much we can decrease it. And let's also get you leading a life that's really engaging and rewarding. So
Wow.
We'll see if we make it there in my lifetime. I don't know, but I can be hopeful, right?
Listen, isn't that, and that comes from your book. I mean, hope is everything.
Hope.
If we don't have hope, then I'm not waking up tomorrow.
Because you don't try. If you don't have hope, you won't try. And what we see over and over again is that, the more people try, they eventually kind of come on something that can be helpful. And then they also discover a lot about themselves. And I can't tell you how many of the stories in the book that people share that they actually, it's called benefit finding. They can actually look back on developing chronic pain and see how it's impacted their lives in a good way, right? How it might have enhanced some relationships, how it made them rethink their career path. And it's, and that's not an unusual thing when people have a chronic illness, is it kind of makes you sit back and say, okay, what really matters?
Well, and that's again where that positive attitude comes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I mean, you can, as I have friends and I kid them that if I gave you a gold brick, you'd bitch about the color. Right. But the people who find it, the people like to call me Tony Robbins or stuff because I'm always going to try to find the positive. Whatever has going on, I'm going to try to find the positive because the other side doesn't seem to work. That's my point. It just doesn't seem, I'm nothing. I'm just smart enough to go, well, I can either jump off a bridge or I can keep walking on this road. I mean, I'm going to go down this road.
You never see what's there, right?
Yeah.
If we don't stick around, we don't know what's there. If we don't step out the door, we'll never know who we might meet or what might happen.
And that's the thing I was saying about the hope of chronic pain. It seems like if you were able to find the things that it can benefit, as bizarre as that phrase I just said sounded, right? But there's a benefit to anything and everything. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're too close to the forest to see the trees. Sometimes the answer is not till 20 years away.
Yeah, and so true. And part of what I do in my book too. So the first chunk of the book is I try and explain the neuroscience as we understand it. What do we understand about the brain, about the processing of pain, and how the heck emotions, thoughts, behaviors, physical activity, how these things actually impact how your brain processes pain. So we spend a fair amount of time doing it, hopefully in a clear and amusing way. But then I go and I talk about how these other processes, like gratitude, like positive relationships, like doing the things you love, how these actually change your biology and your health in ways you wouldn't think. And so, and then in the second part of the book, I tell people to try all these really weird things that they're thinking, this is crazy. Why am I going to do this today? But I'll try it and see if it's something I can do. And to other people, they'll say, oh my gosh, I so want to keep a gratitude journal or something. I use that as an example. I would love to do that. That sounds great. That makes sense. And I hear from people down the road about how these things, these small little things you do, have radically changed their health, their life, and their view of the world.
Here's that one of the things I have heard now after reading your book and the last, it seems like the last 3 years, but probably in the last 10 years. How many times journaling has come up?
Oh, yeah.
For so many things. I literally just interviewed a national comedian 2 days ago. And I'm like, what do you do? And he goes, oh, my process is I get up in the morning and I go to my favorite coffee shop and I have a yellow notepad and I journal. And I'm like, journal? He goes, I just think of whatever happened to me the day before. Mm-hmm. And he goes, at some point, there'll be something kind of funny there. Now, you never think about it, right? But you never think about it. But I've heard so many people, I've heard different walks of life. Yeah. And then when I read your book and it was like journaling, and I'm like, oh my God, this thing, I need to start this, because it's like the good Lord just keeps slapping me upside the head going, hey, how many times do I need to hear, you need to hear this before you start doing it?
Journal. So I'm an advocate of the good old fashioned paper journal. So, go down to your independent bookstore, one of the big ones, and buy yourself a special journal that just feels good in your hands, right? That you're proud to have, something really cool. Get a good pen, and every day write stuff. And it doesn't have to be anything anybody would ever see. So there's schools of thought called the artist's way, where one of the practices is for writers who get writer's block and others who get writer's block. Get up in the morning and just do a core dump. Just write without taking a breath. Just write whatever it is and don't even look at it, but it's just cleansing. For others, I suggest that, you kind of at the end of the day, take stock of the day. There's an intervention called 3 Good Things. At the end of the day, think about 3 things that happened in the day that were good. And then write just briefly about them and what made them so. So if one of the good things that happened is that you had a great lunch with a friend, what made that so? What made it so is that you've been building this friendship, you reached out to her, you cultivated this relationship, it feels really, great. And so you write about kind of 3 things each day. Other people are just as happy just to write 2 or 3 good reflections. What is something you thought about that day? And others, it's a great tool to think through problems. Right? Write the problem down. Create your pro and con list. Yes, no. And, there's something about how we process information once it's written. Just the act of getting it out of here and having it go through the hand and getting it on the paper tends to clear this, because this isn't all rattling around. You now have it on a piece of paper and you can sit back and it's like, oh, I got my solution. There it is. So journal.
Because as she said, and we're going to take a quick break and come back, no matter where your pain is, it's actually in your head.
It's in your brain.
In your brain, which is where your head is. And it doesn't mean it's not real.
Right.
It's very real.
It is.
And that's where the key to understanding and helping is. We're going to come back with Dr. Afton Hassett right after this.
Sterling Oak Cabinetry has one goal: to build the cabinets of your dreams. They literally specialize in custom cabinetry. No cookie cutter, everything looks the same stuff that you find at the big box stores. Your kitchen is the centerpiece of your home, and your home is your biggest investment. They can work with you or your designer to build just what you want with the materials and finish that you want. And because they're a brand new company, they'll be getting busier and busier. But if you order right now, they'll get your order to you in 6 to 8 weeks. In the world of cabinetry, that's blindingly fast. Contact Rob Scovman at RSKOVMAND at yahoo.com or go to sterlingoakcabinetry.com and get your dreams made reality tomorrow. At Reed Animal Hospital, they treat your pet as if it was their own. Now, I'm a very satisfied customer. I can tell you they mean that. It's not a chain. It truly is about helping you and your pet enjoy life together. Dr. David Reed and his entire staff take the time to get to know you and your pet. I can tell you what I like. He's helped me better understand what my dog Luna needs and how I can take care of her more efficiently and kindly. Find them online at reedanimalhospital.com. 2 locations, Saratoga and Campbell. Little secret from me to you, Dr. Reed actually gives you his cell number so he can answer your questions and concerns. They really are committed to you and your pet. reedanimalhospital.com.
So as we were saying, right, no matter where the pain is, and that's what I got, it is real.
Yes.
I love the fact that you take to task some of the old school people who, then we're talking doctors, who would
Yes.
go, it's in your head. It's dismissive, as if it did not exist, that you
Right.
were making it up. And I love that you took them to task in a very genteel and sweet way, but still,
Yeah.
the shiv in the back with a smile.
Because it is so important that we do a better job educating at our medical schools about pain, and that we call other professionals on it when they're being unprofessional. And when people come in to a doctor's office and say, I have pain, because it can't be seen doesn't mean it's not there. But you know what? We see it so we see it when we do neuroimaging. We know that when people have chronic pain, we can actually watch how the brain amplifies the signal. When we place like a benign stimulus, like a little pressure device onto the thumb, when we do this in patients who have chronic pain or any chronic pain illnesses, like fibromyalgia, chronic low back pain, we often see that the brain will light up in response in a really powerful way, indicating that we are causing some very serious pain. But we apply the same level of pressure to somebody who doesn't have chronic pain, and the brain just kind of barely registers, I get pressure. So that's one of the important ways that we see how the pain signal is actually being amplified through the central nervous system, and the brain is processing it as major pain. So it's there.
Isn't that crazy? I mean,
It's amazing.
because as you said, people tend to be in chronic pain. Your brain is oversensitized to it.
Mhm.
That it becomes so the pain that you would feel,
Mhm.
if you stepped on a rock,
Mhm.
it's discomforting. Well, somebody who's dealing with, let's say, chronic knee pain,
Yeah.
that's a different level of pain for them. But you're going,
Big.
I've stepped on a rock before. I've stepped on a Lego.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you've done it with your body and your
With
brain.
your
You've
brain.
not done it with mine.
Yeah, it's very, and it's amazing how the brain and the central nervous system adjust. So this, I don't know if this is the best analogy, but you've probably cut yourself with a knife before. Maybe it's a little teeny weeny cut. And about 3 days after that, sometimes that becomes so exquisitely painful. And you're looking at this boo-boo going, why are you so painful? And what's happened is it is your central nervous system. It's kind of rewired. It's now hyperalgesic, meaning that a little teeny signal is just being amplified like crazy. So our bodies all have the ability to do this, to take the signal and just amplify it like crazy. With people with chronic pain, it's just kind of doing that on its own. The brain has learned how to make pain. And so often when there's some other thing that happens, it could be even a stressful thing, if something stressful happens to you, you can feel a little bit alarmed, and then that just sets off the pain process.
And chronic pain should not be confused with just the pains that all of us get,
Yeah.
as we get older.
Yeah.
I sat at the couch the other night, and all of a sudden I cramp my knee, and my wife goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "Knee cramp." She goes, "Why do you have a knee cramp?" I said, "Because I'm old. Give me
Right.
2 seconds, and it'll go away, and it'll never come back. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know." But
But I don't know, but probably what makes that better is by you get up and you move around, you stretch it out a little bit and you walk and say, okay, that's better. It's not all that different with people with chronic pain. One of our biggest battles is that when people with chronic pain are told by their physician, it's safe to exercise, you go exercise. They're afraid to. They don't go out and exercise because they're so afraid they're going to re-injure. But what we know is that's the one thing that's probably almost the closest thing we have to a silver bullet is to get people moving again and to getting a little, and I don't just say exercise. It's not going to the gym. It's moving, it's walking, it's dancing, it's going out shopping, it's doing whatever involves movement and getting out. That's the best thing that we can do for our bodies. Just like your aches and pains of sitting on the sofa get better when you move, most chronic pain does as well. If it's not due to cancer or to an inflammatory disease like rheumatoid arthritis, so it often helps them too to walk and move.
Yeah, and you can see it because I do go to the gym. Right. And I've seen people come in who are not moving well.
Yeah.
And 2-3 months later, it's like they're different people.
Yeah.
And it becomes, that's where the addiction comes in. As I always say, I'm not working out offensively anymore. Offensively is when you're trying to look good, to attract. Defense is when you're trying not to die. So that's where I'm at. I'm trying not to die, and I just want to be able to move. And I love how that is having the courage to move forward. And it is scary. It's scary for anybody. It's scary for obese people. It's tough, but it's like it's doable. And the more you do it, the easier it gets in some way because you get more used to it and you understand what your body can do.
Right. I think that's important. It's understanding what it can do, being willing to push a little bit within reason. We never want to push until we're in pain, but we do want to kind of walk through or move through some of the stiffness. That's a good thing to do. But really our health, just like chronic pain, our health, if you don't have chronic pain, is kind of based on the same pillars or domains, right? We want to make sure we're moving a little bit. We want to make sure we're eating as well as we possibly can. We want to sleep well. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces we see in chronic pain that I know when I was doing more clinical practice and I'd supervise my trainees and I'd tell them, hey, you got a person with chronic pain sitting before you. If you want to make the biggest strides ever, get them sleeping well again. Because about 80% of people with chronic pain do not sleep well. So they wake up a bunch of the night, they have insomnia, then they can't fall asleep, or when they do fall asleep, they wake up and then they can't fall asleep again, or wake up feeling totally unrefreshed after like an 8 hours worth of sleep. Just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I was hit by a bus, even though I slept. So these sleep problems are really a big central problem in chronic pain, especially in conditions like fibromyalgia and chronic low back pain. But really, insomnia and sleep problems is kind of a national emergency. I mean, so many people suffer, at least on occasion, but chronic insomnia and chronic poor sleep are really highly associated with the development of chronic pain and making your pain worse. And if we can get you sleeping again, often the pain gets much better, as does the mood, the thinking, the fatigue. It's pretty amazing how they're all connected.
That's one of the things I was going to bring up with you is that sleeping is a national emergency. And even as much attention as we pay to it, I still don't think we pay enough to it. And we all go through those bouts. We all go through the bouts of, my superpower when I was young, and the reason I was able to do morning radio and still do it for as long as I have been able to do it, is I could literally fall asleep within 1 to 3 minutes. I mean, bang, just be done, sleep, wake up, here we go. And never nap, just didn't do that stuff. But as we get older, our bodies change. And it's interesting when you bring up sleep to anyone, everybody, rarely do you hear somebody go, I sleep great all the time. It'll be like, oh, I know what you're saying. I slept great last night, but 2 nights ago, everybody, I've been at, gatherings with friends where there's 10, 15, 20 people, and we'll all take turns. Within the last 7 days, everybody had a sleeping issue. And I find that wild because beds are better than ever.
Isn't it something? And, but, it is, the question is, what are we doing to make us more sleepless, or are we just talking about it more? But, I think I worry about our devices, that the blue light that emanates from our phones and our laptops that we're looking at until 10 o'clock at night, that really does trigger or rejigger our own circadian rhythms. The parts of our body that work beautifully like a clock that say, time to wake up, time to go to sleep, time to crash a little, time to be more aware. These are all said beautifully, but they often run on light. And so one of the best things almost anybody can do is within an hour of waking up is get some light, get to a window, get your face, have your coffee outside, get a little bit of sun, a little bit of light. Really, really a powerful thing, because the body doesn't like surprises. It likes things that happen.
Yeah.
Really particularly likes to eat at a certain time, and everything is kind of regimented. And when you are bringing bright light at 11 o'clock at night because you're staring at your computer, it starts to throw everything out of balance. And so this is some work that I'm doing with another colleague of mine who does really marvelous work in chronobiology, which is how do you change the natural sleep rhythms by using bright light therapy. Her name is Helen Burgess, and she's written some just beautiful papers, but we've just started to explore how important this is in chronic pain. And it is.
So I want to touch on two things. About, first of all, at some point, all of us have lower back pain. And somebody who's listening right now going, my back kind of hurts all the time, What is the difference between chronic back pain and the back pain that comes with being human and moving around and all of that stuff? Just so people kind of know.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, at any given time, we probably have something that's a little achy. Once you get over 40, that is kind of the deal, right? But chronic low back pain or chronic pain really is pain that is present almost all the time over at least the last 3 months. So if you have a boo-boo, you twist an ankle a little bit and it's kind of sore for 6 weeks and it gets better. But, that's not chronic pain. That's an acute injury that healed and went its normal way. This is often not even due to an injury. Just maybe one morning you wake up and you're like, oh, God, what happened? What did I do to my back? And it lurks, right? And you end up, after about a month, you've probably gone to see the doctor, and the doctor says, we don't know what it is. Why don't you try X and come back in another couple of months? If it's still there and it's still troubling you, by 3 months, we say, well, that's kind of chronic pain. That's what that is. The question is the degree to which it's high impact. Is it causing you not to do the things that you want to do? Is it impairing your ability to do your job, to spend time with your family, do the things you need to do, run your errands and all the rest? If it starts to disrupt your life is when we start, really thinking, okay, we need to treat this. Even with a minor disruption, we really do want to treat it.
See, that's interesting, because lower the levels, there are levels of it. And if you can deal with it, my back's always, I play golf, I run for my size. My back's always a little tweaked, but nothing that ever stops me from doing anything. Right. And so, I don't need to, I don't seek treatment because it doesn't stop it's kind of tough to get out of bed in the morning, but after 5 minutes, I'm fine.
There you go. So you're describing something that sounds a lot like, maybe a little osteoarthritis, maybe, but or just the process of aging, and we get stiff, and it just takes us a little longer to get everything moving again. And that's that's great. When it starts to impair, when it's constant, when it's severe, you want to see a doctor, because it could be a sign of something else. Pain is often a harbinger, or it says, hey, some other things going on in your body. You might want to get it checked out. So I have a low threshold for wanting to check out something that's painful, but just because. But
I grew up in the era of rub some dirt on it.
Isn't that something? Over some Bengay.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a Jedi mind trick I did with my kids, right? when they would get a little thing, and they weren't hurt, but they were just hurt a little bit enough to get the attention. I'd always go, all right, here's the deal. Look at me. Pain receptors only work for 10 seconds. Let's count. 1, 2, 3. And by the time I got 10, they'd be fine. So Jedi mind trick them.
This is so cool, though. But it is because we say pain is biopsychosocial. So it's biological, your genetics and it's your body. Psycho, meaning it's what's going on in your head. If you're fearful of your pain, if you're angry, all those things make pain worse. But social, how pain is accepted. I mean, there's whole cultures where pain is just not acceptable. And so people suffer in silence. But pain is also social, and we teach our children how to react. I mean, we've all seen the 5-year-old that goes down and skins her knee, and you think, oh no, what's going to happen? And then the mom shows up, hey, look at you! Wow, that was a beautifully graceful fall. And then the daughter smiles, right? And there isn't the expected screaming and wailing because the social element of it was affirming and was safe, and nobody freaked out. So, we all get much worse if we injure ourselves and everybody's freaking out around us. Then their pain is going to be worse and you're going to have a worse experience. So that's the social element of
Hey,
pain.
listen, it was only in the last few hundred years that if you broke your leg, you were
Yeah.
expected to die.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
so right. Yeah.
I mean, it's yep, sorry, Bob broke his leg. He's
Yeah.
gonna die, and
What a
we're gonna
shame.
put him out here and let him die, right? I mean,
Because he gets septic and he's gone. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's only in the last few hundred years that we've grown so much. I mean, if you really want to read some history and literally like up into the 1900s, what was considered medicine
Oh,
will shock you. You
a,
know,
a good bleeding or leeches or all
listen,
these.
President Garfield died because he got shot, and they stuck their hands in his wounds trying to find the bullet, and they did not wash their hands.
Oh my gosh. And
So
he got septic and died. Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
a president of the United
Yeah.
States. So that was the utmost in medicine at the time.
Yeah. We've come a
It-
long way. Yeah.
it's
No, we've come a
shocking,
long way. Yeah.
very shocking. And the other thing is, I don't know if there is a more misunderstood ailment. And
Mm.
I can't tell you what it is, and I'm hoping you can define it for me. Fibromyalgia.
Oh, that's what we do.
I know. So this is why I've been saving it, because I'm like, you're not
Yeah.
getting out of here without talking that.
No. So I'm at the Chronic Pain and Fatigue Research Center, the Department of Anesthesiology at the University of Michigan, under the direction of Dan Claw. And this has been his windmill that he has been tilting at for the last 30 years and really done more than almost anybody else to legitimize. He was one of he and along with Rick Gracely and a number of other neuroscientists were the first to really show that, the thumb pressure example I gave earlier, that when you press the thumb, that the brain really lights up in people with fibromyalgia, and it's much less so in normal healthy, so that there is this reactivity. And so to us, fibromyalgia is really kind of the endpoint of what happens to a lot of people with chronic pain. So in chronic low back pain, sometimes that starts as a back injury that is very clearly in the back, and then rehab occurs, and the back should be better after all that rehab, but it's not. And so what we understand to be happening at this point now is the brain now is manufacturing the pain. So the brain itself has overlearned the pain signal, is now on its own, doesn't need anything in the back, but it's telling you the back hurts. Fibromyalgia was the way that we started to understand that, because the pain was all over. So how do you explain pain that is all over somebody's body? It's because the brain is sending the signal or detecting the signal from all across the body. So we understand that there's, really different types of pain. There's pain that comes from an accident. You have an acute injury, right? You really ripped a muscle or a tendon, and that's quite obvious. It's an acute thing that's happening somewhere in the body. You could have inflammation like rheumatoid arthritis. That's creating the pain. You could have a neuropathic pain where a nerve is being impinged on by the spine. That's what's causing the pain. But when we have what we call nociplastic pain, or pain that's generated or amplified by the brain, that can happen all on its own or on top of these other types of pain. And so this is really where the pain field has moved in the last 10 years, is really being able to identify these different types of pain, treat them because they all need to be treated a little bit uniquely, and looking at this brain driven part of pain, and really focusing in on how do we make that better. And that's a big piece of what we're doing in the book. How do we get this sneak attack when the brain is just processing pain in an unhelpful way?
So, do I understand it this way that fibromyalgia is not a like okay, it's not a definition of an elbow pain. It's not the definition of like knee pain or back pain. It
Right.
is an all over pain because the brain is overloading on the pain symptoms, and so it just tells you that the pain may move around, that you can't
Yeah.
pinpoint it, you can't treat it,
Yeah.
and so it's wow.
Yeah.
That
So the
is
brain it's detecting things that aren't there. When you think about phantom limb pain, right? So there is kind of this known phenomenon that when somebody loses a leg, very commonly, or an arm or appendage, very commonly that former limb is incredibly painful as detected by the brain. It's as if the person says, no, 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 I know my leg is gone, but my foot is killing me. Because that's imprinted on the brain. And so the brain is creating that pain, even though the appendage isn't even there. But we know nothing different. I mean, that's how it's detected. So the brain can do this kind of anywhere in the body. Our job is to help rewire, to change how some of that circuitry is processing the pain signal. And there's many things that we can do to do that. And that's kind of, maybe we want to kind of think about some of those 30, skills and strategies that we talk about to help people begin to find ways to rewire.
that's just bizarre. Like I said, I've heard this term really in the last 15 years. You've heard it started being said, right? But I have no idea. I don't. It had the same connotation as supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I don't know what that means either, right?
Yeah.
But I've heard it,
Yeah.
and to know that it's your definition is overwhelming.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I wish I just
No, I
simply
mean it
went.
is. I mean it is. And I don't say that as a thing. It's just it makes you feel. I have a cousin who's been battling fibromyalgia, and she's
Yeah.
always had my sympathy, and she's always had
Right.
my concern, but she's never had my understanding because I
Uh,
couldn't understand.
oh, yeah. Give her the book, and you take the book too. Give it to our
I
family.
will. I will give that to her. She lives here in town, and I will
Yeah.
make sure she has this. It's
Yeah.
absolutely. It'll be
Did-
a blessing on so many different levels. And are we making, as we were talking about, and you said you're trying to catch up, are we making pharmaceutical headway into the treatment of chronic pain
Yeah.
without addiction? And I know that's got to be a
Yeah.
huge thing.
So you know what? Like everything else, our pharmaceuticals are okay. We have 3 FDA-approved medications for fibromyalgia. They work well in about a third of patients. And again, it's that same thing, trying to figure out which third responds. Um, we haven't done anything miraculous, and opioids can be incredibly effective for some people with chronic pain, and incredibly devastatingly terrible for others. And so, we often recommend that people do an opioid experiment. So people with chronic pain who've been on opioids for a long time work with their physicians to slowly taper off and see what they're like on the other end. So once that opioid is gone, give it a month and see how people feel. And if they're hideous and their pain is awful and it was much better on opiates, well, then consider going back on. But most people come to the other side after about a month and say, oh my God, my pain is better. How is my pain better? How am I thinking more clearly? How is my mood so much better? How am I sleeping better? So some of our medications are kind of not helpful. So our recommendations are often to do as many non-pharmacological things as possible. Try and avoid being on 15 medications. We
Mhm.
can't tell what's helping what and what's hurting. Can we maybe try a medication and then some series of things? Can we, if somebody really is willing to do some walking and do some physical activity, are they willing to maybe do yoga, some other movement therapy? Are they willing to do meditation? Because somehow dialing down all of the stress and taking all the fear signals out of the brain mix can help, because often our brain is just detecting whatever's out in the body. If it has some sense of pain, it's going to freak and say, emergency, emergency, pain. if we are able to kind of dial down that by mindfulness, we're often able to kind of dampen down that frightened pain signal. So there's many alternative things that we can do. So for some people, it's acupressure. Some people, it's acupuncture. Some people, it's just doing fun stuff and doing things that they're 100%, their attention is engaged and they absolutely love. And I've had patients look up and say, oh my God, I felt no pain that whole time I was doing this thing I love. I'm playing the instrument. I'm playing an instrument again. I'm singing again. I'm painting again. And it's because our brain can only pay attention to so many things at once. And if we're really engrossed in something that we love, we actually can have incredible pain relief for that time.
Completely agree. Like I said, I have,
Yes.
my lower back will nag me a lot during the day, except when I play golf or when I run. When I
I'm a
play golf
golfer
or I
too.
run, it never
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah.
You know,
Other things hurt when you're playing
oh,
golf.
my
Like,
soul is crushed. Let's be
know?
clear. I played with three 80-year-old men yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Two of them outdrove me
Oh,
consistently. And
no.
it filled me with hope and despair at the same time.
Isn't that something? It is. It's the most maddening game known to mankind, but it's the only time that I feel totally free from work and everything. Like when I'm out there golfing.
Well,
So,
it's like I tell them, I said, here's the truth. This is the definition of golf. Our life is going so well that we pay to add frustration to it.
isn't that
Right?
great? It's marvelous.
It's this is why I look forward to this hour, because I knew I was going to learn something. And
Oh,
that's my favorite shows, or when I know I'm going to learn something and there's going to be something in it for everybody, whether it's you or whether it's somebody you know. It's the Chronic Pain Reset. Dr. Afton Hassett, you've just been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be on.